So think about this for a second. How does a continent of, well, warring tribes manage to become a global power only to tear itself apart and then try to rebuild over and over again? That right there is the story of Europe. And we're about to unpack millennia of conflict, innovation, and culture, all through one single powerful idea.
I mean, that's really the core question, isn't it? Europe's entire story is like this giant pendulum, constantly swinging back and forth. On one side, you have these powerful forces of unity, pulling everything and everyone together. But on the other, you've got these equally strong forces of fragmentation, just trying to tear it all apart. And if you can grasp that one dynamic, that constant push and pull, you've basically got the key to unlocking its whole history.
All right, so to make sense of this massive story, we've broken it down into 5 acts. We're going to start with the Roman blueprint, then see what happens with its collapse and the rise of Christendom. After that, it's rebirth and rupture, followed by revolution and empire, and we'll finish up with the ultimate test, the 20th century.
Okay, let's dive right in. Act 1, the Roman blueprint. This is where our story really begins, with the very first massive attempt to bring Europe together under one banner, one set of laws, and one incredibly powerful idea.
You know, the groundwork for all this was laid way, way back. You've got Europe's first literate society, the Minoans, popping up around 3000 BC. Then, of course, come the Greek city-states. They're the ones who give us the real building blocks of Western thought, things like philosophy, democracy, science. And after Alexander the Great takes that culture and spreads it eastward, one power rises up to truly dominate the continent, Rome. And it's Rome, really, that gives us the first true blueprint for a unified Europe.
And the scale of what Rome achieved, it's just staggering. For centuries, they had this thing called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. I mean, just think about it. A huge territory, all governed by the same laws, linked by these incredible road networks, and everyone in charge speaking Latin. This wasn't just about conquering people. It was about building a shared identity, a shared infrastructure that would echo for centuries. But as we're going to see again and again in this story, these moments of unity in Europe, well, they rarely last forever. And so the pendulum starts its first really violent swing back in the other direction toward fragmentation. I mean, just look at the difference here. When the Western Roman Empire officially falls apart in 476 AD, the whole unified world of law and order, poof, it's gone. What's left is this messy patchwork of smaller warring kingdoms. This new era is all about invasions and migrations, and the whole continent just kind of turns inward. But, as Rome's political structure completely crumbled, something else stepped in to fill that power vacuum. That something was the Christian Church. It had already become the state religion in the late empire, and it was pretty much the only organization that survived the collapse intact. It's the church that kept literacy alive, that held on to bits and pieces of Roman law, and that slowly, very slowly, started to glue the continent back together under a new banner: shared faith. But here's the thing, it's crucial to understand that even with this new religious unity, there were still massive divisions. By the 8th century, you have this guy Charlemagne who tries to bring back the Roman Empire in the West under Catholicism. But really, the continent was already split 3 ways. You had Roman Catholicism in the West, the Byzantine Empire's Eastern Orthodoxy over in the southeast, and a really powerful Islamic civilization down in Spain. This religious map, it basically drew the battle lines for hundreds of years. Okay, our third act is a fascinating paradox, seriously. It's a time when a great intellectual awakening, something you'd think would bring everyone together, actually causes the continent's most profound and violent split. It all kicks off with the Renaissance. It starts in the super wealthy cities of Italy, and it's this rebirth of classical Greek and Roman art, science, and philosophy. And thanks to the revolutionary invention of the printing press, these ideas just spread like wildfire, creating a shared cultural movement all across Europe. But this new mindset of questioning everything didn't just stop at art and science. Oh no. It turned its sights on the most powerful institution around, the church. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther nails his criticisms to a church door, and because of that same printing press, his ideas go viral. This one act triggers the Protestant Reformation and completely shatters the religious unity of Western Europe. And let's be clear, this rupture wasn't some quiet debate between scholars. It unleashed more than 100 years of unbelievably brutal religious warfare. The 30 Years' War especially was one of the most destructive conflicts in human history. We're talking millions dead, and some parts of Central Europe were just devastated. The dream of a religiously unified continent was gone, for good.
So, in this next phase, that pendulum we've been talking about starts swinging to wild new extremes. You've got scientific and technological breakthroughs creating all this amazing progress, connecting the continent in ways nobody could have imagined. But they also create powerful new ways to divide people.
First up, the Industrial Revolution. It physically changed the face of Europe. Steam power, factories, and especially railways. They linked cities and nations like never before. But this great unification of business and travel also created these deep new social divides between the wealthy factory owners and this huge, often desperately poor new working class crammed into the cities. And at the very same time, a totally different kind of revolution was happening in people's minds. During the Enlightenment, thinkers started to challenge the whole idea of kings ruling with absolute power. They spread these electrifying new ideas about liberty, equality, and the radical notion that a government should have the consent of the people it governs. First, these ideas explode into reality in America. And then, boom, in France in 1789, they just completely upend the old order.
Out of the absolute chaos of the French Revolution, one man rises to the top, Napoleon Bonaparte. And he tries to unify Europe all over again, but this time he's doing it by force, under French rule. And while his armies spread a lot of those revolutionary ideas across the continent, his final defeat, well, it didn't exactly lead to a new era of peace. No, instead, it led to this, a brand new kind of fragmentation. The 19th century basically becomes this incredibly tense standoff between huge, competing empires. You've got Britain, France, and a newly unified and very powerful Germany, all scrambling for industrial dominance and carving up Africa and Asia for colonies. It was an intense, dangerous competition, and it was setting them on a collision course. And that collision brings us right to the 20th century. This is where that pendulum of fragmentation is going to swing more violently and more destructively than at any other point in history. In 1914, those imperial rivalries finally just exploded. World War I was a 4-year-long catastrophe. We're talking trench warfare, poison gas, industrial-scale slaughter. It didn't just kill a generation of young men. It completely shattered the old world, toppling the Russian, Austro-Hungarian, German, and Ottoman empires. And after a very brief, very unstable peace, all the unresolved problems from the First War, mixed with a global economic depression and the rise of terrifying new ideologies, led straight to World War II. This conflict brought a level of destruction that was even darker, culminating in the Holocaust, the systematic, state-sponsored murder of over 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. And even the end of that war didn't bring unity. It brought this, a new stark division. A so-called Iron Curtain fell right across Europe, splitting the continent in two for more than 40 years. You had the US-aligned democratic West on one side, and the Soviet-dominated communist East on the other. And yet, out of the absolute ashes of 2 world wars, a completely new, totally different idea for unity was born. This time, it wouldn't be about conquest. It would be voluntary. It started small, by linking the coal and steel industries of old enemies, France and Germany. From there, it grew into what we now know as the European Union, this unprecedented project to tie economies so tightly together that another major war on the continent would become, as they said, practically unthinkable. Which, of course, leaves us with today. After this long and often brutal history, that pendulum is still swinging. So what's next? Will the push for more integration win out, or will the forces of nationalism or new conflicts bring on its borders pull the continent apart all over again? The past shows us one thing for sure. Both are always possible, and Europe's next chapter is still being written.